This is a Cash and Crises podcast from CashEssentials with James Shepherd-Barron. Topic 1. The future of cash.
For the past decade or more, the media have regularly reported on the imminent demise of cash. This is because alternative digital payments instruments are readily available, ranging from debit cards to contactless and mobile wallets, and even virtual currencies. All of these digital instruments challenge the traditional function of cash as a private and trusted medium of exchange. More recently, health concerns related to the potential for banknotes to transmit the COVID virus have also resulted in renewed calls to abandon cash altogether. Yet, despite these disruptive evolutions, there is something of a cash paradox in the world of money. Far from shrinking, the demand for banknotes and coins has actually been growing around the world year on year, according to the European Central Bank and others, a situation which only accelerated with the onset of the COVID crisis. Perhaps this can be explained, at least in part, by the simple fact that cash works. And until such time as some virtual equivalent matches the benefits cash brings to society, it always will. This is especially true in developing countries and in times of crisis. Consider this. Over half the world's adult population did not make an online transaction last year, according to latest data from the World Bank, most of them because they couldn't. Nearly 1/3 don't have bank accounts. And according to GSMA, a lobby group representing the mobile phone companies, less than 15% of the world owns a smartphone or has access to 4G services. All of this forces us to think about the long-term implications for the way society manages itself. As financial technology upends payments, money management, and even currencies themselves, does the world still need cash? Or is cash a fading relic of a bygone era, a fountain pen in a touchscreen world? Here to answer this question, and to talk about the future of cash more generally, I'm delighted to be joined by Guillaume Lepecq, founder of CashEssentials and author of an influential new report on reimagining the future of cash. Guillaume, welcome to the show, and great to have you on.
Thanks, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, before we go any further, perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be so well informed about this perhaps underappreciated aspect of our daily lives.
My mother once told me that at the age of 10, I wrote a story about the journey of a 10-franc coin, traveling from a little boy's pocket to a till in a bakery and then to a lady's purse. At a professional level, I got involved with cash at the end of the last century. At the time, I was working for a business think tank promoting European monetary integration. And as you may recall, the introduction of the euro was phased, with first in 1999 the locking of the exchange rates of the currencies which adopted the euro, and 3 years later the introduction of notes and coins. And this really put cash under the limelight for many, including myself, who discovered the social and economic importance of cash, as well as the complexity with which it circulates throughout the economy. Some have argued that the introduction of the euro was the largest logistical operation ever carried out in times of peace. I suspect it may have been surpassed by the COVID-19 vaccination programs.
So I'm in the UK, you're in France, and in both places, especially since the COVID pandemic has hopefully peaked for the last time, we both suffer from the cash paradox. Perhaps you could start off by telling us what it is and why is this so significant?
Yeah, the cash paradox is a phenomenon that's been observed in many countries and corresponds to an increase for the demand in banknotes, while the use of cash for retail payments appears to decrease. The trend is not new, has been observed in many countries, including Australia, the Euro area, India, Japan, the UK, and the US. This trend has accelerated sharply during the pandemic at unprecedented levels. The volume of cash payments has declined as economies went under lockdown, but at the same time, cash in circulation grew by 15% in the US in 2020, 11% in the euro area, or 30% in Mexico. For me, the paradox illustrates two of the key functions of cash. It's a payment instrument and it is a store of value. And more than a store of value, it's a haven in times of crisis.
Well, so what is it that's so unique about cash? It's a medium of exchange and it's a store of value. But in an increasingly digital world, what is it that cash is doing that digital payments are not?
Well, cash is far more than a payment instrument. It's a form of money, and it's the only form of central bank money which is available to the general public. In that respect, cash possesses unique attributes which, until now at least, are unmatched by digital alternatives. First of all, cash is universal. It can be used by all, accepted by all, does not require a bank account or a device, and does not depend on a telecommunications or electricity network. Secondly, cash generates security. Banknotes are secure, they always work, including in times of crises or disasters. They also protect the privacy and anonymity of users, including against political exploitation or surveillance capitalism. But perhaps most importantly, cash connects people. It's probably the most widely used product in the world and contributes to a form of social cohesion. The same notes and coins are used by all, regardless of age, gender, or ethnicity. All over the world, children learn how to count with banknotes. And as such, cash is the first step in financial literacy.
But nevertheless, isn't the digitalization of cash inevitable?
Cash is already an integral part of a digital ecosystem. Today, at least in mature economies, most consumers will withdraw cash from the bank account using an ATM and increasingly deposit it using the same device. Around the globe, a growing number of innovative companies are leveraging software, modern communication technologies to improve access, acceptance, and the overall efficiency of cash. But beyond that, cash is also a safeguard against some of the threats and challenges posed by digitalization. It protects individuals' right to privacy against surveillance capitalism. It protects the most vulnerable against the digital divide. And it provides a space of freedom, including against authoritarian regimes. And when systems crash, cash is always there as a backup.
This freedom from authoritarian regimes is interesting in terms of social utility. But I was thinking about some other aspect of, for example, what about the role of cash when it comes to the privatization that digitization seems to afford, when people are getting fees from each transaction? Does cash act as some kind of bulwark against fee inflation and the cost of transaction overall?
Let's say that payments are a big business. They're a huge business. According to McKinsey, payments generate over $2 trillion in revenue globally. That's twice the size of the airline industry and roughly the size of the GDP of Brazil. There's an increasing number of stakeholders who are competing to capture a share of this huge market. Some have compared this to the next space race, and interestingly, some players are competing in both the space race and the money race. Banks traditionally were the incumbent providers of money, but their revenue streams are under pressure from both regulation and competition. Fintechs have clearly changed the marketplace, often by providing solutions for specialized market segments such as online payments, remittances, or foreign exchange.
Sorry, just to interrupt. What's a fintech?
A fintech will be a combination of finance and technology. So fintechs will range from startups specializing in niche products to companies such as M-Pesa, which has developed mobile money in Western Africa, or PayPal, which I presume most people know.
Yeah, that's very helpful. But where does all this social utility and form and function of the physical cash, of physical currency, where I mentioned in my introduction about how half the adult population of the world anyway, did not or could not make a financial transaction. I mean, these people, half the world doesn't have access to fintech, at least in terms of formal financial services, formal financial inclusion. What does cash do for them? Are they able to go without cash?
Yeah, I think you're right. The future of money should not be limited to a competition between cash or digital, and it certainly shouldn't be restricted to payments exclusively. The focus should be on the social and economic role of money rather than the choice of technology. And in my opinion, the future of money should be a system that is efficient, fair, inclusive, resilient, respectful of individual privacy, and focus on social and human betterment.
Well, that said, what factors are most likely, in your view, to shape the way the world is going in terms of cash? What is likely to be the future of cash going forward?
I think cash is evidently important for the unbanked, the underbanked, but also a range of vulnerable groups in society, including the poor, the illiterate, those who are unable to prove their identity, or those who are marginalized because of ethnicity, religion, or gender. However, cash should not be limited to these groups, as that would only contribute to marginalize them further. And it's important for cash to remain a mainstream instrument. And we need to encourage, including the more privileged members of society, to use cash as it contributes to support the infrastructure that's so important for the more fragile groups.
And if that future is mostly mobile, and I was talking about how few people actually own or have access to 4G enabled smartphones, does that mean the future of cash is assured, or is something else? Is this fintech going to upend the way we see cash and its future role in society?
Well, very clearly, there is a level of competition between fintech and today increasingly with digital platforms who are all looking at launching their own form of currency. Again, it's not an issue of technology. It's an issue of establishing a system which is inclusive, fair, sustainable, and viable. In my opinion, it requires a diversity of forms of payment and of forms of money. And cash needs to be part of that ecosystem.
So that would seem to suggest that the future of cash is assured one way or the other, and the data certainly seems to support that. But when we go all the way back to the cash paradox, it nevertheless does seem slightly counterintuitive that while the value, I think you said that the value of payments is increasing and the volume of cash in circulation is increasing. How is it increasing if the number of transactions is going down?
Well, quite simply because there are an increasing number of people who have been using cash as a store of value, which covers a broad range of principles. I mean, store of value includes people that might put cash aside to pay for their big bills at the end of the month, whether that's school, electricity, or other utilities. But it might also be simply people that will increase their what experts will call precautionary holdings. People who will simply hold a bit more money in their wallet or at home to be ready in case of a rainy day. This is something that we've seen occur during the COVID pandemic at totally unprecedented levels.
Well, what are the implications in terms of, say, inflation or central bank digital currencies and negative interest rates that people talk about? Are there any implications there?
The implications. I think there are a number of there are a number of groups there are various groups who advocate for a cashless society. A former member of the executive board of the ECB put these groups into three distinct camps. The first one were the alchemists who'd like to try new things in terms of monetary policy, including negative interest rates. The second group is the law and order camp, who want to replace anonymous cash so as to be able to monitor and control all of our transactions. And the last group was called the FinTech Alliance, who include a number of companies who have a vested interest in replacing cash with their commercial payment solutions. The battle is shifting today. It's intensifying. It's also moving from payments to money. In 2019, Facebook announced the creation of their own virtual currency, initially called Libra, now renamed Diem. And in the Facebook announced that it was designed to let people shop and make low-fee transfers globally. But this was a game-changing initiative because it meant that Facebook was not just competing with banks or fintechs, it was competing with central banks to create a totally private currency. In response, a number of central banks around the world have been increasingly investigating and exploring the feasibility of a central bank digital currency. And motivations vary quite significantly from countries that want to prepare for a less cash future, Sweden, for instance, or those who actually want to stimulate less cash-heavy economies, such as Eastern Caribbean nations. Most central banks have clearly stated that central bank digital currencies would not replace, but would coexist alongside cash. And let's just recall that at this point, we're just at the exploratory phase.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating insight, Guillaume, and thank you very much for giving us this glimpse into the future of cash. My takeaways, if you like, are that the future of cash is not just assured; it's kind of necessary. That its use as a monetary instrument is not about cash or digital, but cash and digital, and how the two things coexist. And that in whatever form, a token or a digital currency or other, that cash offers our respect for privacy, and that we should be careful to protect that in case that was ever lost. These are my takeaways anyway. Well, that's all we've got time for right now. I hope you find these insights useful when considering how cash is managed for society. And if you want to know more on this or other cash-related topics covered in this podcast series, please have a look at the Cash Essentials website at www.cashessentials.org, where you can subscribe. Until next time, when I'll be back with you to take an inside-out look at how cash is managed for societies in crises, stay safe wherever you are.